Hey there YouTube, Travis here. This is the well-loved Tomos A35 moped, and it's done. Or is it? Let's talk about it. So if you haven't been following along, this is a moped that a very good friend of mine has owned for about 10 years. I took it off his hands about 2 years ago. It's a very high mileage moped. Really, this thing goes way back with me, so I've got some sentimental attachment to it. When I first got my hands on it, the engine had finally failed. The crankshaft had some up and down play, and for sure that's what led to the cylinder and piston becoming really close friends with each other and seizing. At that point, I did a full engine rebuild, so that video's up on the channel. The rebuild was a success, I'm happy to say, despite some of my methods for getting the cases back together. If I ever rebuild another Tomos engine, heating up the cases is going to be the move. I used the bolts to pull the cases back together, and I didn't love that. It's one of my big regrets of that video, but thankfully it all worked out. There's been a lot of work that's done on this moped here and there. It was never a major focus of mine, but I think it's finally in a spot where we can call it finished. Now you might say, Travis, how can you call this done? It looks kind of ugly. Well, here's the thing, mechanically, it's all sorted. So yes, it has a bi-turbo, a replacement stock cylinder, and a high compression head. And right now, it'll start first kick, it'll run really well, all the lights work, and once you get to top speed, it will sit at 35 miles an hour all day, which for this setup is really about all I ask of it. All right, so I'm gonna pull it out of the sun, and we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the many repairs that this bike needed. All right, so when it comes to everything that's been done on this bike, we're just gonna take it from the top. The drop bars on this gone, replaced with a nice set of black, kind of stock-like Tomos handlebars. When you get a little bit older, having to be hunched over your moped all the time when you ride it, it's just not doing great things for my back, so I've been putting more and more stock bars back on my bikes. Maybe you can relate. A lot of this stuff is sourced from stuff I have in my bin. Unfortunately, the second black waffle cone style Magura grip that I had was yellow, so that's what sits on here now. The other one would just kind of fly off. The original Tomos controls were kind of butchered, so I went ahead and slapped on. This is an Italian CEV stop run switch. It functions. There's a little bit of lazy wiring. You'll notice most of the red wiring is now gone. I just have a very simple ground right at the fork ears. I can make that nicer anytime I want, but for a reliable beater, it's good enough for now. The throttle cable and the rear brake cable are brand new. More on that in a minute. Actually, more on that right now. So one of the maddening things about Tomos throttles, you'll notice under here there's a nice throttle screw for tightening down your throttle cable. However, this can get stripped out, like mine just did. So one of the cheap fixes you can do is put a NARP right after it, and gosh, it's not going to come out under camera, but it's there. So you can use pliers to pull the cable and then tighten the second NARP, not the first. You can really find yourself in a place where you're thinking your throttle cable is all set up, and then after you twist the throttle a few times, it's not pulling the cable all the way. So that was the fix for that. Working our way down, obviously the paint job on this bike, which is compliments of the prior owner, is not gas resistant, so there'll be a conversation eventually about what to do about this. Unfortunately for now, I'm just being very careful when I add gas. Probably most noticeable are these two side panels. This is actually the original color of the bike, this silver, and these are new old stock from Treats. They happen to have both right and left. I don't know if it was for this exact model bike. I did have to drill out the hole on the carb side a little bit, but other than that, they fit pretty well. There was covered in a prior video, but the oil injection system has been bypassed on this bike just to make absolutely certain that we don't have any seizes in the future. But hiding under the side cover is a brand new carb. This is a Delorto Shaw 1515. The factory carb is the 1412, of course, and that carb I know has been off and on so many times. I really tried to play with it. Everything from the throttle slide being kind of damaged and the idle screw like dug into the wrong portion of it, to the float bowl screws, to the clamp screw. Everything was kind of just wore out on it. So I eventually just threw a brand new carb on there, and it's been nothing but smooth sailing since then. This is the bi-turbo that it's had for, gosh, probably 10 years. It was starting to crack here, so I did some very desperate times welding and got that patched up. So we're still good to go right there. The prior owner was nice and installed these aftermarket shocks, which are great. However, they were set at the softest setting, and so the very first major speed bump that I hit, the back wheel came up and it destroyed all the wiring going to the brake light and tail light. So had to pull everything down and redo that. And these aftermarket brake and tail lights had the thinnest wiring ever, so it was a lot of fun getting that all patched up. But we did, and now it works. And for that rear suspension, there's a tool that grabs on to the bottom of the shock here, and you can move it. I adjusted it 2 pegs difference, and it seems like it's fine. There was I believe probably from a Motobacane long seat on this bike originally. It was very uncomfortable. It was not really attached, so this is just another replacement Tomos 1.5 seat. And as we can see, obviously, the oil injection tank has been removed. This is a brand new rear tire to match the front. It's kind of funny. I'm used to replacing moped tires because of age, because they're 30 or 40 years old. But in this case, this one was pretty well wore out, which was nice to see. So got a brand new rear tire. And then for the rear brakes, it was a whole day of playing with this. But the rear brake never quite returned all the way like I liked it would, so it would stick. Had to take the whole assembly apart, and ultimately, well, the cable's brand new, the pads were brand new. The real issue was underneath the arm, the pivot point right here. So blasting that with some brake clean and then some grease, finally it works where it returns really nicely every time. And in fact, this moped, ugly as it is, has some of the nicest brakes of any moped in the fleet. The front and rear are both, new brake shoes, which were in there when I got the bike, but having the cables adjusted and the mechanisms on the brake plate lubed made a huge difference. And let's see, finally, there's the engine itself, which was the subject of the Tomos A35 drop and rebuild video. This has been a complete success, which is wonderful. There's a few call outs from that video. One, the aftermarket crankshaft I used has the keyway for the flywheel key, or the flywheel pin for Tomos, machined at just the wrong spot. And so if you use that out of the box, your timing is going to be pretty low and the bike's going to run pretty poorly. What I did for now is timed it without the key, so I have another video on how to do that. It's held up great since then. We have great spark. It starts first kick. I'm very satisfied with it. Someday I might Dremel out the parts of the stator so that I could use the key, but for now, this thing is so reliable, I don't think it'll really need that. The cylinder is a replacement stock cylinder. The head is a stock head, but it's actually been milled down. Someone else did this. I got it in a box full of parts, and I wanted to give it a go. Ultimately, it raised the compression from about 120 to about 160. So I'm pretty happy with that. That's not too high where I'm worried about it or it's difficult to start or anything. But it definitely has helped with the low end. It did nothing for the top speed. So there's that. Let's see. Other things with the rebuild. I replaced some wear items like the reeds. The factory originals actually seemed like they functioned pretty okay, but I had them, so I put them in there. And then also transmission side, it got the aftermarket Treats clutch pads. So that was a thing as well. And it's also worth mentioning the factory ones didn't look too terrible. They were a little beat, but not really. They could have been run again. But now I can rest easy knowing that it's got all new clutch shoes in it, and it should be good for a really long time. So really, I'm at a point now of where do I go from here? Do I have to do anything from here? What's the definition of done when it comes to a moped project? Well, looking ahead, there's a couple options. So I could do a full restoration of this moped to bring it back to its 1996 or 1997 self. But that was never really the intent with this project. Additionally, the frame on this thing has been chopped. The rear fender, the front fender, the rear wheel is not in great shape. The forks are tweaked. It's fine for a daily rider, but for a full restoration, you'd almost have to get another parts bike. So option two, if I can't make it, fully restored and original, could choose to make it go really fast. I think right now, 35 miles an hour with this kit stock cylinder, pipe and carb is really about all I'm going to get. Maybe I could bleed a mile or two more an hour out of it, maybe. So I could make it go really fast. We could get a larger kit, a larger pipe, and really start to push things a little bit, but I don't really think that's the move either. If I want to go fast, I have other mopeds that I've already built up. If I put more go fast parts on this, there's a possibility we could break more things. Those clutch pads I put on are not really rated for kits. Your expense goes up, and is the return really worth it? I don't think that's necessarily the move either, but it is an option. And option number three, which I'm kind of leaning towards, is, we call it done. I think as it sits, this bike is a great loaner for people who come out of town for moped events. It's a great daily rider. When everything else is broken from blasting too hard, there's always the nice, reliable Tomos to fall back on. And generally, if someone comes over and wants to experience a moped and try one for the first time, it's a nice fit. If it gets dropped or dinged or messed up, aside from my nice new plastic side covers, it's not really going to do much harm. This bike has been dropped an awful lot. So there's a real purpose there, and I think that's where I'm leaning. So everything considered, I think this is a pretty happy ending for this bike. All right there, YouTube. Until next time.